Hello, my friends. Today's episode was yet another heater as we just got off with Sebastian Siegel, an actor, screenwriter, director, author. What doesn't this guy do? And also a dear friend to the Call to Action podcast. He just finished launching his most recent film called Grace and Grit, which is now streaming on all major platforms, so go check that out. Our conversation was phenomenal, although the Zoom quality was sub-phenomenal in various places. So please bear with us at times as the internet gods keep blessing us with audio blips. Still, in 2021. Couldn't make this stuff up, folks. But the topics of discussion are far more valuable coming from the man himself. And with that, here's Sebastian Siegel to talk to us about Grace and Grit. Enjoy.
Welcome to the Call to Action podcast, where we bring you incredible people and even more incredible stories with discussions and topics about what it takes to sacrifice everything to overcome hardships and failures to achieve success. Our guests heard the call. Now it's your turn.
So Sebastian, welcome, my man. Congratulations on such an epic accomplishment. Just what an adventure, what a journey. I remember us working out and starting off from the stairs, and you were in your ideation stage. You're like, I'm gonna make this movie. This was many years ago, and you were just starting to write the script for it, and you were coming up with the concept and how do I properly do this? And from step by step, from there to fundraising, to getting the cast list together, to executing this thing, man, I've been on the sideline watching this whole thing happen. And then to see it on my Amazon account with the entry scene, directed by Sebastian Siegel, to see my brother's name right there was just, it gave me goosebumps, my man. And just congratulations on such a fucking feat. So many people wish they could do something like this, and they sit there and they complain about, but you're just a doer, man, and you got it done. How does it feel?
That's so cool. I think that because you guys are, you and Keith are such doers also. It's like even today, I wanted to be at the studio and we couldn't make it happen, and traffic and the schedules and stuff. But you guys persevere, you're resilient, and I think that's the quality of any doer sees that in every other doer. Yeah, which is really just about, doesn't matter if the sea is calm and the wind is at our backs, or if the seas are huge and we're facing torrential downpour and tsunamis. We just keep moving forward. And if sometimes you're moving forward and the current's going outward and you're moving forward and you're moving forward, but then when the current cracks and you're still going forward, you get a little zoom.
That's right.
You like the little zoom. And I think that's a great metaphor for anything, whether it's a movie or a technology or a video game or a podcast or starting any kind of vocation or raising a family, anything like that. Yeah, it's just to keep moving forward. And I think when it comes to movies, yes, I think a lot of people have dreams and hopes and particular talents or skill sets that above all demand a certain amount of resilience and perseverance and follow through. So for me, I don't think of myself as being talented in any particular department, but I'm willing to do the work and I'm good at the follow through, just going again. Like all those sets we did on the stairs. All those
That's
days.
true, my man. And one line in the movie, or lines, but one moment that really, and we'll get into kind of the process of it. And I know we're kind of crunched for some time, and I want to hit everything we can, but I wanted to really start with this because it kind of moved me. And I also, because I know you, I know that, and I'm going to ask you if you wrote this piece specifically, but here it goes. And this, for anyone that hasn't watched the movie, go watch it. It's called Grace and Grit. That's what we're here to talk about today. Sebastian Siegel, the director, and I'm assuming also a writer and producer of this whole beautiful film that he's put together based on Ken Wilber's book. And in the movie, about an hour and 20 minutes in, this woman is reading. I'm assuming it's a friend of Treya, the main character, and she's reading this line, and it's just so powerful if you break it down and re-listen to it over and over. And it goes like this: that first noble truth, there is suffering in the world. To take part in it feels like I'm engaged in a special journey, only taken up by those who can handle it. I call it passionate equanimity. I do all I can without attachment to the results, just for the love of it, the love of life. And my goodness, knowing you and your mentality on how you attack everything you do, and kind of that sick, beautiful, twisted, I guess, energy that goes with life itself. You almost have to have a sick, twisted sense of humor in things, but also it's really relevant to anything tragic we go through in life. And the way that it was portrayed, she did a beautiful job reading it off of the letter that was sent to her, being, Treya's friend in the movie. But did you write this line? I have a feeling you had something to do with this.
That, you gave me chills when you quoted that. So I did adapt the screenplay from the book, and the book chronicles Treya's journals, right? And chronicled by Ken Wilber. And that is directly from her journals. That is her writing. Wow. And that thing she called passionate equanimity. That was an actual letter that she wrote to a lot of her friends. And this idea of passionate, hold on, and equanimity, let go, right? Psychology jumping in and spirituality jumping out, like the in-breath and the out-breath. In other words, giving all we can to everything we do, but without the attachment to results, as she says, just for the love of it, for the love of life. Which, when you think about it, if you're doing a dance, it's the best when it's like that. If we try too hard, we stumble. If it's signing our name, if it's kissing, if it's painting, if we try too hard, we fuck it up. But if we just let it go, we give ourselves to it, and we surrender to it, then it's there. And so that's an important letter of hers, and I love that it struck you like that, because it certainly struck me when I read it in the book, and I knew that needed to stay in the film for sure, because that's so much of the essence of it. And I think really, like, the metaphor where you're talking about, for us, sports is such a big thing, and there's so much of that. Give everything you can, but not to win the game. Just give everything you can, because it's part of this smaller celebration, which echoes this larger celebration of life. Yeah,
for sure. And especially for her story, going through such ups and downs, roller coasters of like hope and tragedy, and just, but keep going. It's almost like she has to, and this is Treya, the main character, and her husband, Ken, just having to go through life. You can't, sometimes you hit situations where you can't go around, you can't go under, you can't go over, you kind of just got to go through it. And what I thought was so beautifully written by this is what she's saying essentially is, I accept where I am and what's going on, and just, she still finds a way to love life. And it was so beautifully written and so beautifully done. It really gave me goosebumps, man. It really did. And I think, how do you feel going from this ideation stage to releasing a movie, a Hollywood movie on Amazon, Apple, and all these big platforms? Like, how are you feeling seeing it, that it's like the project is 90% done? Because obviously there's promotion, and the last 10% is kind of just like being in the media and whatnot. But how are you feeling after releasing a project that you've spent so many years, you've dedicated so many years to doing?
I think of myself just as being in service to it, and so in some way, I don't think of a final point. I think of it as a chord, as part of a greater song. Yeah. I'm working on many movies, and some of, the gestation period can be months and years. And there's several others that I've been on for years that are in prep or pre-production, or et cetera. And this one was very close to my heart, obviously, because Ken Wilber was such a big impact on me, had such a big influence on me and to so many other people around the world. And so I'm happy in the way that I was able to bring it to the screen, because it's not an easy movie to bring esoteric films and stories about transcendence and love beyond life. I'm happy in terms of being in service to them and to him and to the people who love his work, that I was able to do that. And I think the film's beautiful because I was able to collaborate with such extraordinary artists across the field. But I don't think of, I suppose, there's just a resonance that carries on. It feels good to be carrying the torch in some way, for that book and for that story. And here we are still carrying it together. I mean, someone's going to, listen to this or watch this and watch this movie and have a huge impact on their life around the way that they love, around the way that they lose fear of death, around the way that they get hope in love, beyond life, and that's why we make this. That's why you make a film like this. So.
Have you spoken to Ken at all since I'm assuming you have, like, what have things he said about the film? Was he extraordinarily impressed with kind of the work, and what did he think about it?
Yeah. I flew out there before it released to Denver to see him. I'm the only person that he had seen in the last year and a half, other than his doctor, a friend, and his assistant was very close with him, and his assistant's partner. So I flew out there, showed it to him, and he loved it. And he wrote a beautiful review online. He thought it was exceptional.
That's amazing.
Ahead of the curve. Like the book, I think there's never been a book written like this, in the way that it's got three voices. It's his voice, her voice, and then the author's voice as well.
Right.
And so the film has that. It's told from her voice and from his eyes, but there's also a kind of transcendent voice that extrapolates the kind of story that's going on between them. So it's ahead of the curve. It's avant-garde, I think, at the least. Yeah,
absolutely.
But he loved it. He laughed a lot. He cried, and he, thought the film was brilliant. And I think it's just because I was able to extract the blueprint of what was in the book and able to, through partnership, put it on to the screen.
What I really appreciated about what you did with the film in the edits and the storytelling, like, a lot of people are always saying, like, oh, the movie's so much different than the book, etc. And I think those people are kind of like dull and tone deaf because they're not realizing there's two very different subsets of end users, right? Like a book, what's the person doing? They're sitting, they're absorbed. Like, words can describe things that, I think that books can describe things into enormous detail as long as they want, because they have any bit of time that they need. Whereas a movie, like, you're kind of on a time budget here. So you've got to hit the major points as best as possible and then craft it. And what I think you did a really, really good and phenomenal job is that you took, and this is just Ben's opinion, but I'm interested to hear what you think as well. But like, I think you did an amazing job taking a risk on the creative interpretation, on simply like the way that it was edited, like the long gazes. Like it's so anti-Hollywood, which made it so unique and so amazing, because usually in movies, everything is kind of just like cut scenes, jump cuts, and it's just, whereas you were able to like spend time in those unique moments. They're looking at each other as a couple when they first meet, and everything's really going well. Like, I felt really happy, almost like this is too perfect. Where's the tragedy? I know it's coming. Like, it's so happy. And the way they touched each other's lower back gently, and like the even like, I guess the LUTs, they call them, the colorations. And you guys did a phenomenal job with making it a very unique film. And how did you take that and create this vision for that? Like, where do you have a team of people, or did this something you kind of created and already knew before the film started?
Yeah, great question and great insight. And I think that you're bringing up at the top there two very interesting things. One is philosophical, and then one is just a matter of like what you're talking about end users. It's like talking about the movie Titanic, right? And people say, no, the book is better than the movie. The book is better than the movie. Well, no, screw that. You should have been on the boat. That was so much better than reading the book. We were on it and it really sank, and people really died. That was really the thing, So it is. It's like the reiteration of stories, whether they're in music or songs or told in the Bible or over time in, whatever form, the story takes on a new life every time it has a new medium. Yeah. And sure, in this case, the book should serve the movie and the movie should serve the book. But you think about this is something that took 5 or 6 years to live, that's written in a book that's 400 pages, that took 8 years to make as a movie, that in the end product is an hour and 48 minutes. What to leave in, what to leave out. In terms of me as a craftsman, there was things that I put in the book, took from the book that I said, this has to go in there. We don't have time to put it in a movie, so it goes in metaphorically. In terms of the result of kind of, the holding the gazes, and I greatly appreciate what you said about this being sort of the anti-Hollywood film, which it very much is that I think about the songs that moved me, right? And there's so many amazing songs and movies that just transformed me with these incredible state experiences. Off the top of my head, U2's One, that song One, right? One Love, One Life,
Right.
Yeah, that song's so beautiful. It's so beautiful. And growing up hearing that song, every time I heard the U2 One song, it was just like, oh man, and what's in there? There's this, suffusion of lyric and tone and melody and beat that is experiential. Yeah. If I have the words written out, the song doesn't mean anything. If I just have the beat, the song doesn't mean anything. But all those things together massage us into this place where by the time I reach the end of that song, I'm like teary-eyed and full of hope. That's the power of music. That's the power of movies, right? And so when you say the long gazes and you say this anti-Hollywood film, absolutely. A Hollywood film, and what that means really is lowest common denominator. There's nothing wrong with that. But if it's not lowest common denominator, there's going to be critics that are going to hate it, and it's not for everyone. And this movie has come out that way. Audiences, 98% across the board say amazing movie. And there's a couple critics out there who have just said this is horrific, And what's been interesting about that is that audiences have come out and said, who is this critic that said this? Like,
exactly.
Someone?
What gives them? What makes a critic too? Like, who grows up and says, I'm going to be a fireman, I'm going to be a cop, I'm going to be a movie critic? Like, because I never, I feel like the critics almost, and sorry to interrupt you, but I had this moment too, because I was going to ask you about the critics and like, how do you handle them? And do you eat their soul in their comments by like it just fuels you and you're like, I get where you're coming from and I appreciate the feedback, but you don't understand. I feel like critics are guys that wish they could have produced a film, but didn't have the huevos to do it.
Totally.
And, they sit around twiddling their thumbs, waiting to hate, like almost like the keyboard warriors in a way. And what makes them an expert? You tell me. I don't know.
Read the book.
It's really interesting, right? What you guys are saying in the way that there are many amazing critics, right? And that love movies. Yeah. And then, and that's fine. And they all have their opinion, but they have a job, right? And their job is to serve their constituents. And if their constituents are lowest common denominator, then they've got to serve that lowest common denominator. In other words, if you're doing a show on E and they say, hey, let's watch Grace and Grit, they're going to say, listen, this is a beautiful movie. We love this movie, but we need to know what's the hot shoe this season, right? Mm-hmm. It's just a product of that's their end user. So the critic, wants to serve the greatest, lowest common denominator. And that's it. None of it's personal. It doesn't matter to me what they write. The fact that a critic, like that covers it means that it's an important piece of art in the world. It's an important movie. They only cover a dozen movies, 10 movies a week. So that they're covering it means that it's substantive. And also I think it puts it on the map in a way that it gets other people to reply in the same way that you're replying. That a lot of people called me, who are some of the greatest movie makers in the world, and said, hey man, I read this thing, and just so you know, like, this person is a moron, they can't stand me, or whatever they said. And I said, look, I have no emotional attachment to that. As you said, this is the anti-Hollywood movie. The film is experiential. Yeah. Somebody, whether they like U2's One, or whether they like, The Tree of Life, or Black Swan, or The Fountain.
Tree of Life, Black Swan. Wow.
Whatever, these movies, you have to sit in there and you have to feel the gaze. And I wanted, the book did that for me. And so my responsibility as a director is not to make an audience happy in that way. It's to give the audience something that is true. And in other words, to take and extract from the book something that was true and that has moved hundreds of thousands of people around the world and moved me in such a way, and deliver that to the screen. And according to the author, and according to Deepak Chopra and Marianne Williamson, and so many, John Mackey and a lot of brilliant actors, a lot of Academy Award winners, we achieved that. Yeah. And according to also, more importantly, audiences who have loved someone and held someone who's died in their arms, they said, this is the movie. It's never been done like this before. Those are the people.
Real quickly on your list, Black Swan, Tree of Life, the cinematography, coloring, everything that you did with directing in this. Now that you mentioned those, it's right there. It's that got that artisan spirit, which really resonates with me. I love that, and I definitely see it here.
What I appreciate about this film too is that I felt like it challenged me, because this film, this genre, I should say, is one moment. We're getting a gift from Zoom running out of time. We've removed the 40-minute limit. Okay, great. I'll edit that out. Don't worry. What I appreciate about this film is that it challenged me as a viewer. Not that I needed the motivation to watch it from start to finish, just the genre itself, and I'm talking more in generalities, is that it really pushed you, because most individuals, and I feel like this goes back to the critics, they're kind of wanting like the action pieces, the typical cut and paste type action movies or love movies that you see all the time. And if it doesn't fit in that little category, they're so close-minded that they're just like, I'm not giving it a chance. And not that they even deserve to give it, but this movie personally challenged me because it was so emotional. And I have to say that since the last time you and I have seen each other, and this is, again, I know you know me, we challenge each other, all three of us do, but Sebastian and I, when we when we're together in person, we're working out, we're doing things, like there's always this love of just, hey, you want to go one more round? Let's just go till we die and then we'll talk. It's like this, that's what I felt with this movie. And it just challenged me. And especially when the moment in the movie when Treya gets pregnant, because I've personally had a son since this pandemic 4 months ago about, and when she got pregnant, it's completely changed my perspective on life. And so when viewing this movie and seeing, on their honeymoon, she gets diagnosed with this just tragedy, and they're in Hawaii. And then, throughout the film, she gets pregnant, and the decision to have to make, and I'm not going to spoil it for the viewers listening right now, but, that specific moment really moved me because it was so real. And it goes back to what you were saying. Like, you really made this movie stand out because everything that was happening was actually real. And you don't feel that in movies typically. Like I was saying earlier, it's like jump cuts and whatnot. Like, man, how much time was spent, I guess, with these actors and actresses, just creating this realism? Like, is that a typical thing for directors to do? Or like, what's the process like that to create this type of environment? It's abnormal and it's brilliant.
Thanks, man. Yeah. Because I started as an actor and then I wrote, produced, and directed for over a decade, started in commercials and then trailers and then shorts and then documentaries, learning on set about what creates an environment that allows people to really be their best. In a symphony, if all the musicians haven't all worked together, it's okay if they all trust that everyone else is doing their job and playing their instrument, and they all trust the conductor. So then all of a sudden you have this thing where the cello and the violin, they may not know each other and they may be across the room from each other, but they pick up a resonance with one another and you get this beautiful chord. And I think that a lot in producing a movie is putting together a team and a crew. Yeah, with my producers, my producing partners, every single person who touched this film is such an important chord for this film. Yeah, from production design to, lenses to colors to costumes to actors to everything, script coordinator, everything. So to create that safe place for actors, as a director, is the most important thing, to allow the actor to take the risks. Because in a film like this, especially content like this, the actor is going to be beautiful, the actor is going to be attractive, the actor is going to be cruel or selfish or arrogant and then graceful, and then all those things. The actor's going to have sex. The actor's going to, fall in love. The actor's going to be angry and be, all those things. So to create a space that is safe for the actor so that they can push that instrument to the limit is the most important thing as a director. In other words, it's a sacred relationship. These two actors were brilliant. All the actors were brilliant in this film. Every single performance, even people who just did one day and a guest star, extraordinary performances. But particularly these two leads, Mina and Stuart, they really trusted me, and I pushed them to the limit. And because they trusted me when we went to those limits, they were comfortable just closing their eyes, and they do the work. These are, exceptionally talented actors who have done, so many amazing movies between the two of them. Yep. That when the environment is safe, they trust the material, they trust me, and it showed up on screen.
Were there moments
Absolutely.
in the production with these the actors and actresses, like especially with Mina and Stuart, were there moments where it was almost like a incongruence with the movie itself, Grace and Grit, where they had to like dig deep and have to like charge through difficult situations? Were there moments, or is it, because personally I don't know, I've never been on film set, I've never been in the experience, but I can imagine there's got to be moments, just like an athlete does. Like from my background, I can understand it from an athletic standpoint, and you are almost like, if we were to make this analogy, you're kind of like a coach, and a coach's job is to allow the creative freedom and trust in the players to execute their position as they see fit in the moments, that they're going to make the right decisions, that they may go a little on the edge. They may ride that line of like, I don't know where this is going, but then they execute and they produce. And then it's like, wow, I just was able to witness this. Were there moments like that in the film that you remember?
There were, and it's a great analogy because if the athlete, the NBA or the NFL or the wrestler or the swimmer feels comfortable with the coach and says, hey, look, I'm having this challenge today, I'm feeling this insecurity, or I'm unsure about this event, then the coach can say, this is what we're going to do, right? This is what I want to try. I know what this horse can do. I know what you can do. I know what you have tried, right? At some point before we shot the scene where Ken is in the bar and he's crying and he's laughing and it's kind of this crucifixion resurrection moment, yeah. And he asked me about any of the scenes, but he asked my AD came and was like, hey man, Stuart really wants to see you in his trailer. And I was like, okay. And I'm doing, we're going 4 a.m. to midnight every day for a month, right? So I go over to his trailer and he said, hey, I'm a little concerned about this scene. Like, how are we going to do this? I'm supposed to cry and laugh, but there's no dialogue in the whole scene, right? He's like, how are we going to get there? And, and I said to him, listen, I read this scene in the book and I understand it so well, and we're going to get there. It's in you. It's already in you. And I'm going to work with the other actors who are going to be in the bar dancing with you and, who are going to be pulling you up. None of them speak English. They're all going to be German. And so it's this point really where
it was a dark moment in the movie.
Where Stuart's character goes from this dark and then all of a sudden ends up in the ocean at night looking up at the stars and realizes that he's going to be torn away from the woman he's in love with, but that he's going to be with her forever, and that he's already been with her forever. So it's this really powerful moment. So we got in there, and it's by far the most fun I've ever had shooting a scene in a movie. I mean,
really?
Literally, we're in this room and everyone's dancing and I've got the music way up and, my DP Sean, he's amazing. He's up in there. We're going, back and forth. I'm going, all right, Ken's happy now. Now Ken's crying. He's miserable. He's going to lose his woman, and then Stuart's just going all the way there fearlessly. He's dancing, he's arm in arm with all these guys in there, and he's crying, and then he's laughing, and then he's exhausted. Yeah. And then he finds this out point. And it's such a beautiful, beautiful scene. And Kim and Catherine Kluge, who did the score, who also did Scorsese's Silence, the score for that, they just scored that scene so beautifully. It's so powerful. But yes, that was a moment where, and then there was a couple other moments for sure where, it's game time and I've got to be with an actor. There were a couple actors who came in day of and said, hey, what do you think about this? I'm not sure about which direction this goes. My job as writer and my job as director is to know the material inside and out on a molecular level.
To translate it via Ken's vision, his actual experience with it, right? Because you've got to respect the actual experience, and how do you portray that? That's a lot of added pressure, no?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose pressure if you're unprepared, but a privilege if you're prepared, right? You know, like the athlete, like you need you're Michael Jordan and you need to make the winning shot. It's pressure if you're not prepared, but if you've been shooting the free throws and you've been doing the shots all summer long and all year long for so many years, it's exciting. You know, and so for me as director, I like to do a lot of preparation, and I'm prepared, and I know I've got a great team with me, and so I'm ready to meet that challenge. So, you know, when we're on set and a number of, you know, circumstances came up like that, I need to understand that material on a molecular level, not to control it, but to be able to articulate to the actor or to the other individuals who are participating in painting this picture with me, this is what's happening, because every person is going to bring a slightly different palette and color and feel, you know,
very true,
sound. And I'm trusting all of them because I've got a specialty in every department, but the lead, each person, each department, their specialty and knowledge of that thing is beyond mine. And so I've got to really completely trust them. And I think, you know, that you know, when a director is really doing their job, they're really trusting each department to collaborate with them so that we tell ultimately the story together.
So on that, like, because of my lack of knowledge, you know, forgive me, this may be like general knowledge to most people in Hollywood and whatnot. But when on that point of meshing, you know, just like with any other team and organization, et cetera, like, is it important? How does it work? Do the actors come together, you know, prior, like a week before, and just spend time together, kind of just hanging, understanding like them as people, and then kind of going over the material? How does that work to be able to produce and get this kind of execution as an end result?
Usually, you know, I'm looking at a picture that we're going to shoot in the Middle East, and it's sort of this like epic biblical, you know, picture. And ideally, we want to get the actors to have a lot of prep time to get to know the material and get to know one another. In this particular case, no. Mina was cast first, and so then when I connected with Stuart, and I was like, Mina's the one. You know, after we met, I was like, sure. And then same thing with Stuart. I wasn't sure, and then we met, and I was like, he's the guy. For sure, he's the guy. And now I can't imagine two other actors in the world playing it, right? But what was interesting about this is that Ken and Treya met, and they were just like thrust into this world where they fell in love so rapidly. And it was kind of cool in the way that Mina and Stuart met, and I shot mostly chronologically for that reason, so that they'd be able to get to know one another, and that by the time we reach the pinnacle and this intensity builds, this emotional intensity builds about the film, that the actors would get to live through that in some sort of a chronology, that they were really thrust into it. And so the playfulness that started, you know, at the beginning, they have unbelievable on-screen chemistry because they're brilliant actors.
Legitimately.
Yeah, it was really
the end scene. I mean, the end scene. We'll get to that, but I mean, the end scene. You can tell the dynamic got to its pinnacle, like it, just like what you said. Is it crazy? I noticed this in the kind of the end scenes when they were doing the side by sides. Ken looks exactly like Stuart.
Yeah, amazing.
You could not have picked two people that look closer. That was incredible.
You know, synchronicity, right? When things seem like they're coincidence, but really there's a greater music going on, and we become aware of the coincidences, right? You know, that there's something happening through all of us, you know, not through us. And Stuart had long hair, and he shaved his head on day one of filming. And so I knew that there was some facial structure resemblance with Ken, but I didn't know it was like that. And literally, you know, the whole team, production design, and, you know, people were like finding the right glasses for the 3 periods in Ken's over those 5 years, Act 1, Act 2, Act 3. He's got 3 different pairs of glasses. People who know Ken Wilber's work will recognize those glasses. He came upstairs for the first scene after he shaved his head, and we were all like, whoa, like, it was bizarre. People were holding up photos of him and Ken. So
it's almost scary. Like, it's almost like scary. It could be twins. I feel like it was insane.
yeah, it was a cool synchronicity, and I think that happens. Yeah, that happens, and when that happens, there's some sort of recognition that there's a music that's coming through. That, hey, there's something beautiful occurring here. Let's keep playing this music, right?
It's almost like the relationship built, because this story of Grace and Grit, it's like a story and of hope and the exploration of every corner of every possibility that you could get to. And it's like the good, the bad, the absolutely ugly, and everything in between. And it's like this constant roller coaster of like, things are going great, things are amazing, and then the tragedy happens. It keeps trying to pull them away from each other, and at one point you almost feel like they're going to, but somehow they keep pushing through. And as that quote was, like, she did it solely for the love of it, like she just loved life. And it was just so beautiful. And I'm at loss for words at times, like trying to comprehend the story. And I'm not trying to over exaggerate, but a lot of things personally in my life, I can relate to a lot of these scenarios. Like I personally have a friend going through cancer right now. It's a woman, and she's having a semi-difficult time with it. And that drew me into it. But she's also fighting it like a warrior, and kind of seeing what really matters in life. You know what I mean? And like this movie really did it for me. And I have to say, the end scene, my man, I don't know of a better, as the Native Americans like to say, they say they've walked on because the story continues. It keeps going. It's not an end. It's just a continuation. And I've never seen a movie in any situation more real than the death of Treya in this movie. It moved me. It moved Keith. It moved Svetlana. Svetlana was in deep tears. It's because it was like the evolution of her life. She realized just everything came together, and she accepted her position again. And she was happy. She was going out with Grace, and she was afraid. She was scared, but like, I'm happy. I'm so happy. And being held by her loved one, being scared of not seeing him ever again, but going out with Grace. Like, I just was like thinking afterward, I spent like 30 minutes just in silence, kind of just wondering, when I go out, because you and I, we get after it all the time. And it's like, sometimes we do break it to the, that fine line. Like maybe we will get eaten by a shark. And we've talked about this. Like, what are we going to say at each other's funeral? Whoever says something, you better say something fucking cool. It's like, cause that's the way to go out. And that's kind of what reminded me of this. And it was the most real end scene, and it just couldn't have been done better. The last moments of her life, I was there, and it definitely made me reflect post the end credits and whatnot, because I had to watch those and see all the names, and of course see kind of the side by sides. But it's a reflection of real life, and I gotta say, like, it's a breath of fresh air. Just thank you for that,
man. This movie's for you. I mean, that's, this movie's for the lover. This movie's for the romantic. This movie's for the soulful, resilient fighter. Yeah, so thank you, because I made this movie for you. I made this movie this is the audience. You're the audience. People who love life like you do. That's who this movie's for. I love life like this. I push the limits like this. And when I read the book, it hit me in that way. And also, I wanted to make a movie that was so real, that these characters, that it was beyond time, that there's this abstract, dreamy quality to it, but also that it's so raw and real. And we see death depicted in so many movies, and it's always characterized. But anyone who's been with someone who's died, anyone who's held a man or a woman while they died, knows what it's like, knows how intense that is, and how awkward that is, and how beautiful that is. And I've done it. I've seen it, on many occasions. And so I wanted to depict that in the most truthful way possible, because I had never seen it before in a movie like that. So thank you.
It's so true. Like, just maybe spending a little bit more time on this before we wrap up. You've got an engagement we've got to get you to, but how did you construct that end scene? Was that like a collective thing with Mina, with Stuart? Did you guys what's that process like for something like that pinnacle moment in a movie? Like it's got to be nailed. It's got to be done right. What was the process on developing that story real quick?
So, yeah, we got a button on it. So, which is nice. I like the pressure. It's written in the book. Right. And it's very real. So it starts with a script. The script is the blueprint. And when I wrote it, I'm acting out both scenes to make sure it feels real to me. Yeah, I'm devastated. I'm full of hope. I'm crying when I'm writing it, when I'm adapting the screenplay. So there's the blueprint. And then there's a question of the wardrobe. There's a question of the set. There's a question of the location coordination, what room, what house, and I'm choosing that with location coordinator, with production design, with set design, ultimately with my DP, Shan. This is, we've done 4 projects together, guys, brilliant, my closest partner in this regard. And then of course with Stuart and with Mina, that by that point, they're really safe. I know they're prepared. They've got it. And most importantly, both of these actors had the emotional well to pull from. So there was never a question. When we got there, it was just, they're already there. They don't have to prepare for the scene because they've been living it for X amount of weeks. They're already in it. So by the time they get there, they're not acting, they're living. She's
very
really
interesting.
losing someone. Yeah, I mean, and the echo that hits an actor when they're really experiencing it, it's heavy, it's intense. They're really going through a major loss. And these actors on many occasions in this film, really, I mean, the number of times I looked around and I would see everyone on set crying on a number of different scenes when we were filming because it was so real. And so I'm deeply grateful that they were able to portray these two, people to with such truth and integrity. And Ken Wilber thought the same thing. He said this felt true, to me. Oh.
Well, my man, you are such a deep intellectual, spiritual individual. This film is like quintessential Sebastian from my experience with you, because I view you like so much differently than I think someone just looking afar. They see this stud with all these ripped muscles, but they don't understand all those layers of those muscles are extraordinarily deep. And you're a very special human being. You've created something extraordinary, and I really applaud you for following through on a dream and a vision and a quest, and respecting somebody like a random individual that wrote a book about his life, and like taking that torch and bringing it to life visually. And just what a magnificent journey that you've been able to do. And you just keep going. I'm sure you've got many things going on right now, filmmaking and collaboration, etc. But just want to say thank you for your time. Wonderful job with this film. It really moved me, and I'm saying that from the depths of my heart. There were definitely scenes that absolutely touched chords that I haven't felt in a while. So thank you. Grace and Grit, go see it. It's on Amazon, it's on Apple TV, and anywhere else.
Everywhere movie stream.
Everywhere.
North
every
America
single way.
right now, Canada and the US, and then it'll be internationally probably into September.
Sebastian Siegel, ladies and gentlemen, director, filmmaker, actor, just all around stud. Thank you, my man, for coming on the show for round 2.
Thank you guys so much.
We'll do something soon.
Okay.
Appreciate you. Bye, everybody.